always be thinking about acquisition. I don't care if you're 2 weeks, 3 weeks into it, right? Because if you're thinking about, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to build, this is what I want to, exit to, you start thinking about partners, right? And other maybe opportunities that may not be in the cybersecurity realm, but more on the fringe. That's where those organizations kind of have a gap in their value chain.
Welcome to The Roll Call, the podcast where we dive into the roles that define us. I'm your host, John Glahn. On each episode, we explore the journeys of people discovering their true roles in life, business, and beyond. Get ready for inspiring conversations about finding purpose and authenticity. Let's roll the roll call. Welcome to The Roll Call. I'm John Glahn. I have with me Robert Capinjola, who's the CEO of Security Snares and Vigilance, and is kind of cybersecurity guru, all that there ever was and is. I'm so excited to have you here on today because you have been there, you've done that, you got the T-shirt in so many different ways in the entrepreneurial circle. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, great. Thanks for inviting.
Yeah. So, I this is a show about entrepreneurship. So it's hard to not just start at the beginning and say, hey, where'd you go? So I know there's some long chapters in there. But what got your chops going in the entrepreneurial world?
So this was back in the early 90s. And I had a friend that was in the recruiting business that said, hey, I've got a buddy that I work with, works for Sun Microsystems, helped develop Solaris. And he's thinking about starting this new company, and it's focused around cybersecurity. And I was like, I don't know anything about cybersecurity, right? No, right? Neither does anybody else for that matter. But he was, he had the opportunity to work with an automotive company, back early on that, believe it or not, got hacked. And this was in the 92, 93 range. Wow. And he was telling me a little bit about how Sun Microsystems worked and its openness, open communication. And he's like, this thing called the internet that we believe business will start to leverage as a business tool, they're all going to need security to be able to protect those connections, right? Yeah. And there's nobody out there that's doing it. And I said, okay. I said, well, tell me a little bit more. And long story short, I left a pretty nice job, pretty comfy job, and showed up. There was 4 of us, shared an office with somebody. My first 2 weeks, I was like, oh my God, what did I do? Okay, I was a little bit panicked. But at the end of the day, we grew very, very quickly. Obviously, as the internet exploded, people were like, what do I need to do to protect it? And we say, well, you need to put a firewall in. You need to do these other things. Great. We don't know how that works. And oh, by the way, who's going to manage this, right? Yeah. So we saw a big opportunity to be able to provide these types of services and manage it for these enterprise customers. And that's what we really went off. So we were really the very first managed security services company. And, we focused on the large telcos. So Ameritech, US West, Quest, Bell South, Ambertel.
The old
and
names,
we grew, and we grew from 3 or 4 of us to about 400 in about 18 months. So wow. It was very, very quick. And long story short, we ended up getting acquired by a company called Internet Security Systems, Tom Noonan, who subsequently was purchased by IBM. So what IBM is offering in their X-Force is what, believe it or not, we had originally developed way back in the mid 90s. So wow. That's what really got my appetite, going. And that was my first entree into equity, right? Or stock options. Yeah. And, thankfully did financially very, very well. I was still very young and I'm like, wow, I like this.
This feels right. I feel like I could do this again.
I can do this again. Yeah. And from there, I took a little bit of time off and then started another company called TrueArcs. We weren't really sure exactly what we were going to do, but we were going to provide cybersecurity services, help organizations assess their environment, and we developed a thing called the Security Index, which was a unique way to quantify the level of security an enterprise customer had in place and whether that was acceptable. And back in the early days, that was one of the big complaints we heard from customers is you just put a 150-page document in front of me. Where do I start, right?
Right.
So we developed this index to be able to help organizations quantify the risk, the controls they had in place, and it helped them make decisions on where they wanted to invest and where they wanted to invest first, right?
Sure.
So you would provide the biggest return on that particular investment, and it allowed the customer to actually track progress over time. So it was fantastic. People loved it. The problem is the consulting group, a lot of documentation, right?
Right.
And when you're putting a 200-page document together, it's a 3-week exercise, and they don't necessarily like doing that.
Yeah.
So I said, well, what about if we build something, right, to help automate the capturing of the information and, the reporting element? We had some developers that we brought on board. We developed this thing to automate the reporting, and then we're like, well, what about if we take it a step further and allow the customer to start inputting information, assessing themselves, managing and tracking mitigation tasks? And long story short, we ended up building this GRC platform that we thought was really going to be for the SMB market, okay? And one of the things we found out is very large organizations, GE, Procter and Gamble, Disney, and others, they were looking for solutions like this to be able to do just this. Their biggest thing is how do I get 800 requests a year for compliance, right?
Yeah.
How do I make this easy and provide that information? And again, we thought really we were going after the small market, but these big guys ate it up. And kind of our tagline is don't try to boil the ocean, because all the big GRC providers were $3-4 million investments, 4 or 5 years in terms of implementations before they got any value whatsoever. And customers are like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I'm $6 million in 5 years, and I don't have a meaningful report in front of me. So we were like, wow, this is pretty slick. And then ultimately we grew that organization, and I got to the point where things were going so well that I needed to bring on additional resources, additional developers, QA people. So I said, all right, I'm going to go and try and raise money, which I had never done before.
Yeah, right.
And so this being new, I went and stumbled around, talked to a lot of people. People were, well, that's exciting. You got a lot of traction. You got good revenue. This is how the deal would work. And I'm like, well, I'm not looking to raise that much money. Well, no. We start at a $5-10 million check. I'm like, well, we don't need that much money. So these were things that I learned by going through the process on, ultimately how to raise money. And then I actually connected with a gentleman from Chase One Equity Partners, and we were talking about fundraising and would they be an option? And he asked us, he's like, hey, do you work with or do you know who ANX is? And I'm like, yeah, they're a partner. They actually resell our technology. And he's like, well, that's a portfolio company of ours. Would you consider going down the road of an acquisition, which is something at the time I had really never thought of, right?
Yeah,
but I was like, well, by all means, right?
Yeah.
And we had some good discussions, and we went back and forth. And I got to be honest, I walked away 4 different times from the deal, and then ultimately said, you know what? You're a good partner. Let's just remain partners, and walked away from it. And they came back and met us at at our number. And that's one thing that I learned. And I was getting some advice, right? Because again, I hadn't done this before. And is just be prepared, right, to be able to walk away. Be careful how much money that you're looking to raise. Understand how you're going to use it. Because this dirty word called dilution, unfortunately, can get in the way as you start to bring additional investors, and employees on board. So that's really where I learned quite a bit about the fundraising component, and then also on the acquisition side, which I hate to say, I don't want to say it was dumb luck, but it was a little dumb luck, right? I mean, it's kind of running into it, but I think we took advantage of that, and ultimately it turned out very well for our customers, for our employees, and ultimately for the shareholders as well.
Well, I think, again, there's so many questions, so many things to wrap up in there of like learnings. But I think the one thing you just said, like, luck, it fell into our lap. That's most of entrepreneurship is there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And then what are you going to do about it?
Correct.
Right. So,
Yes.
So you can call it luck, but it's,
Right.
Hey, what are we going to do with it?
Exactly. Yeah. And that is one thing when I look and talk to people that are, getting started or looking to, to build a company and raise funds, they haven't necessarily thought through everything. They know they need money, but they don't know specifically how they're going to use it. And that's one of the big traps. People go, I want to get this huge evaluation and I'm going to raise X number of dollars. And then all of a sudden they got to raise additional money. And now it's a down round. Yeah. Which nobody ever gets, excited under those circumstances.
I'm curious of where you go on this, because one is not many people go into a negotiation or go into something like this and like someone's offering them more money. And you're like,
Yeah, right.
what am I missing here?
Right.
How hard was it to say no to that, or did it make you pause and be like, are we thinking big enough? Like, I'm just curious how that.
It did. I was very nervous. The first offer, right, and the LOI and so forth was nowhere, close to what I was looking for, right?
Yeah.
But that led into further discussions, and the other thing that I learned, it's very beneficial. Well, first of all, always be thinking about acquisition. I don't care if you're 2 weeks, 3 weeks into it, right? Because if you're thinking about, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to build, this is what I want to exit to, you start thinking about partners, right? And other maybe opportunities that may not be in the cybersecurity realm, but more on the fringe. That's where those organizations kind of have a gap in their value chain. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, could we go build that? Maybe, but it's going to take a significant time. Market might pass us. We're better off buying, right? And that was one thing I learned, that, everybody, what your company is worth, not what a VC tells you, but what somebody's really willing to pay.
Yeah.
Okay. And someone who has a gap in their value chain and they're trying to execute on a strategy and they don't have this component and it's hurting them and you have it, all of a sudden you become a lot more valuable to that organization. And that's the key to knowing that, number one. And secondly, always have more people at the table, right? The more people who are interested in purchasing you, that's going to definitely help you increase, your exit price.
Yeah. So there's, again, coming back to so many things to learn and think through on here. One is coming back through knowing what you're going to do with the money.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a part of and seen too many where people don't ask for enough, or they just think they just need enough to get started versus thinking of the big picture of, correct, wait a minute, do I have enough runway to keep going? Mm-hmm. And then you're right. Then that next round is painful.
It can be painful, yeah.
So, how would you go about, because most people that go into this, hopefully they're paying someone to help them through this process, hopefully. But what's the far enough window to think, is it time frame? Is it, to think about, am I asking for enough, or what am I going to do with this money? Walk me through some of that.
Yeah, so that's whether you're raising from angel investors, friends and family, or even if you're doing a price round with the big boys, with the VC, that's an element specifically that you're going to get questioned on, right? How did you come up with that number? How far, what is that going to get you? How far is that going to get you? And what are you going to accomplish, right, by doing that, by making that investment? So that's one element that's extremely important. Now, at the end of the day, the VCs know it's all a guess, right? Yeah, at the end, there's,
if it was a given, it'd be done.
You put out sales forecasts, their best guess, right? And they recognize and they understand that. But they want to know, have you thought through this? Okay. All right. And specifically, are you using this money to further a product, develop a new product, or are you looking to use that money to accelerate what you've already been successful with? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big thing, right? I'm always nervous about taking money until I've got that mousetrap finely tuned, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're going, okay, well, I'm going to do an experiment, I'm going to go try to build this. You can still raise money under that, but you got to make sure your investors understand, really where you're at, because they're not investing because they like you. They're investing because they think there's an opportunity, and based upon your track record, they think there's a fairly good likelihood you're going to be successful, right? But 1 in 10 really ultimately are, successful. So I think knowing how you're going to spend that money and being able to articulate that to an investor is extremely important. Again, they're going to ask you questions. They know it's a guess. They know the entrepreneur's excited. They know you're going to run into problems. And they want to make sure, and you want to make sure, that they are a partner and they're going to help you along that way, because you will have to raise more money. Even if you think you're not going to have to, you're going to have to raise additional money.
Yeah, yeah. So how many exits, I don't know is the right word, but how many events has that translated into for you through your...
3. Yeah, 3. And now I'm hoping on number 4 here, which I'm 3.5 years into, and asking myself, what did I do? Why am I doing this again? But it's, it still excites me. It's still what gets me up in the, in the morning. And I'm working with some people that, are going through this for the first time. So their excitement motivates me. Oh, yeah, and, I really want to see them, be successful. They're very, very smart individuals, but they are very much on the technical side, right? So the business component and the fundraising just are not things that they have experience with or they're good at. And that's what I'm helping with, to include, go to markets and all the other things that you have to do to be successful.
Yeah, no, because I recall, again, I don't want to overshare or not share for your benefit, but, knowing that this wasn't your anticipated involvement. No. Right?
Yeah,
but your experience
brought
you right in.
It was funny. I had a very large healthcare client. They had a CISO in place. That CISO they terminated. So they said, hey, Robert, we want you to try and, our business, our security practice. We want you to help find an individual that you think would be a good fit. Okay. And I do know a lot of people. So I kind of went through my Rolodex, and then I ran across this individual. I'm like, wow, that background that's impressive. So I'm like, hey, would you like to grab lunch? I want to talk to you about an opportunity. Went and had lunch with him, and within about 5 minutes, I realized that he was way overqualified for this position. Okay. And I was like, okay, Brett, I said, you great background, but honestly, I think you'll be bored in like 90 days, right? I don't think it's a good fit. And we were talking, and he was asking me a little bit about my background, and he says, hey, do you know anybody that is really good at developing at the Windows driver level? I was like, well, this is my last company with some behavioral analysis. It's exactly what we did. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? And he started to share a little bit about what they had done and what he was building, which in essence was a ransomware technology that is preventative in nature, where it'll actually accurately kill the malicious encryption before damage or disruption happens. And it was done mathematically. And it was used at a very, very large defense contractor, right? 2-letter defense contractor. Yeah. And I said, after he explained a little bit, I still had a bunch of guys that I knew, and I got him connected with my development team, and they started doing that. And he said, would you help me, with some of these things? I said, sure. I started to kind of help him and ask a little more questions on, well, what are you going to do here? How are you going to address this? And, I looked at it and I thought, wow, this could be big. There's an opportunity there. And they basically structured a deal to come on and help run the organization, all equity-based, don't take any money. Yeah. And now 3.5 years into it, yes, it's taken longer than expected, but we have some really good customers, and the traction and the momentum that we have is very, very exciting. Yeah. Very exciting.
Well, no, and that's where, I'm accustomed in many of the business I've been a part of and or coach, all right, are probably more traditional, more whether it can be a service, whether it's a product that is, again, can be exciting or it can just be the boring, hey, we just need to make this widget better,
Correct,
faster, right? But in your world, it's like lightning speed from, what was relevant a year ago.
It very much is. And there is, unfortunately, in the cybersecurity technology world, there's a lot of claims that providers make that they just are outright lies in terms of capabilities. So it takes the customer a lot of time to kind of weed through all of this to really figure out, will this thing really help my organization, right? And is it worth investing, my time, which I personally think is one of the biggest things entrepreneurs need to think about. It's not, hey, the technology's cool or it works extremely well. How am I going to distribute this, right? How am I going to am I going to go direct sales force? Am I going to go partners? Am I going to do the Amazon marketplace?
Yeah.
Because getting people's attention nowadays is so much different than what it was 10, 15 years ago, right? I mean, I think the number I saw last, there's about 9,500 cybersecurity technology companies here in the US.
Wow.
And you talk to CISOs, they're like, I don't have time, right?
Yeah.
It may be great, but I don't have time to weed through all of this.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really figuring out, how am I going to go to market? How am I going to get the attention, right, of my customers? And I've traditionally always gone the direction of partner. Security Snares is 100% channel.
Sure.
And it does take longer to get off the ground, but those people have trusted relationships with their customer, and that cannot be replaced.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's it's now, I don't want to say six and one, half dozen the other, but again, the scalability is a whole different investment in that case, right? Far less than you trying to do it yourself.
It is difficult to get the right person's attention, even if you have the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, right. So have you, through your businesses, it sounds like it's been one, you've had massive scaling, quick scaling.
Yes.
It's been some technology based. It's been, again, in that space, service based, right? So, has there been a secret sauce, or how did you go about structuring companies, and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. So the example that comes to my mind is going back to TrueArcs, and we weren't huge, but I think we had somewhere around 95 employees, right? Somewhere in the middle. Well, one of the things that happened as we started to transition from a pure play cybersecurity consulting company to a software provider, right? Visibility, right? And that is helping your employees understand what the goal of the month, the quarter, the year is, okay? And how specifically they play into that. And what are the things that the company's looking for them to be successful with? And accountability, right? From myself down to the young lady who's answering the phone, right?
Yeah.
They knew when they got up in the morning, they came in the office, they specifically knew what the most important thing was for that given week, that given month, that given year. And
so prioritization.
So I think, just visibility, right? Because a lot of companies kind of hide what they're doing with their employees. I'm just the opposite. I want them to understand. I want them to understand where we're at financially, what we're trying to do, and where we're going. And the major problem that I ran into was, if you can imagine, being 100%, having 70 consultants, okay, and you're now transitioning into software sales, is the consultants are like, well, am I going to be out of a job here, right? Like, what am I doing here, right? And I went through an exercise to help, organizations or help the employees understand what we were trying to do, and that was being a SaaS provider. And I said, there is a different value on the enterprise dollar, right? And I went through and explained, I said, we're going for acquisition. When you have, I'm just making numbers up, $100,000 in consulting services, right? That's going to be valued somewhere, in the 1x, 1.5x.
Right.
Okay. Now take that same dollar and put that on our SaaS business. That's now worth $7 or $8.
Yeah.
Okay. And then took through the exercise of their options and other things. I said, guys, the consulting group is that is the sphere, right? That is what we are known for. It is critical because you continue to feed our application with additional insight and data.
Right.
I said, you are the single most important thing within the organization, but realize there's a difference between those $2. You want this dollar. Do we need the consulting to get the product in there? Yes, we do. And all of a sudden, people's eyes lit up and they're like, I get it. I understand, right? 1x versus 8x on that same dollar. And it really helped align people, and they were no longer fearful of, okay, is the consulting business going away? Do I need to look for a new job? And more importantly, they knew, but what they were doing was directly impacting the success that we were having on TrueComply, which was the name of the product. And that really helped align the organization. There were no more discussions related to is consulting going away. Everybody was in line with what we were trying to accomplish. And within about a year, 18 months, we actually realized that acquisition.
Yeah. There's so many simple commonalities when it comes to, right, whether, again, right, so I'm coaching an operating system that does those same things, right? Mm-hmm. It's about communication.
Yes.
God forbid we tell them the truth. God forbid we tell them where we're going. God forbid we tell them that, hey, how their work directly affects the bottom line. Mm-hmm. And most people are concerned about telling. It's amazing how many people that I meet with, and they're like, I don't want to tell my people how much money we make. Why? They think you make $10 million maybe, and you don't.
Right.
So they don't even know what you're taking home, but at least show them, educate them, right? Because if you don't educate them, they're going to assume the worst thing you ever want. Right?
Yes.
So there's one, just communication, right? And then prioritization.
Yeah.
Which, like you said, they know what they're supposed to do this week. They know what they're supposed to do for the fall, right? So prioritizing what they're supposed to do, which leads to execution.
It does.
Right?
There's no question, because they all have 5 or 6 number one priorities, but which one at the end of the day is the one that's most important to focus on? And that's what we want you focusing on. Yeah. It just made it very easy to communicate what the goal of the organization was doing in specific steps and goals. And we would celebrate those goals, right? If we made this, we'd have big parties and do all kinds of stuff. And if we didn't, which, did happen, okay, let's adjust. What is prohibiting you from being able to do this? And let's focus on, taking care of that or getting that obstacle out of the way. It's just, I'm all about visibility and communication.
Yeah. No, again, it's simple, yet so hard.
Yeah, it is.
Again, being guilty of going breakneck speed, we start going like once we're starting to move down a path and we're moving, and then so many great things just happened. Right. But we don't celebrate them and we're moving past, or we overlook how this one little thing didn't get done, but everything else did. Without everything you just talked about, if you don't slow down and take a look at where you've been, where you're going, and why you're going there, right? Oh, yeah. Everything all just goes out the window. It's amazing how fast it can slide.
Business is tough. It's usually 75% not good stuff, right? So when the good stuff happens, celebrate it, right? I mean, that's the exciting piece.
Yeah. No, I love it. Well, Robert, I think, so now, what's your biggest challenge now in your business?
The biggest challenge really has to do with market awareness, with what Security Snares is dealing with today, right? So our technology is a prevention technology, right? So we actually stop it from working. Nobody else does that. Everything else is reactionary.
Sure.
Let me detect it. Let me try to limit the damage and make it easier to recover. But that loss of data disruption still happens. So you have all of these endpoint protection providers and EDR providers that are out there, very large organizations that do protect from ransomware, but there's limitations. And it's a little bit easier today than what it was 3 years ago, but the methods that they use to detect ransomware are not sufficient, right? I guess that's the best way.
Yeah.
So our hardest thing is just making the market aware of this, right? When we talk to customers, first thing they'll say is, my God, didn't know you were around. I didn't know there was such a technology, right?
Yeah.
We've been ransomed twice in the last 5 years. This is absolutely the last time. So that's our biggest thing is market awareness. Like I said, we're 100% channel. We have some very large partners, global partners.
Yeah.
So this is starting to really change. But that, without a doubt, is the biggest challenge we have. How do we get in front of the right people, the right masses? Being a small company at our stage, no question, that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, not for another time on how to solve it. But just curious. Yes. I was curious. In your current state with your, with your current channel, right? I mean, how much do you place in them, or how much ownership do you take on yourself?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The age old.
Well, as I tell them, right? That's what they are. They're partners, right? We're there to help support them, right? The only thing we ask of our partners is be knowledgeable what the technology does, know what questions to ask, and if you get these responses, that's a good opportunity, and that's when you want to engage us. Yeah. Let us do the the heavy lifting.
Yeah, awesome. I would, from now to, again, you were in a different part of, like we were mentioning earlier, different stage in life, right? Where you were trying to be a passive investor, maybe not a passive investor, but right. And now you're like, hey, wait, I've got this opportunity now. I'm jumping back in. Correct. And I know different energy level, different things, but where do you see, what is your actual role? Like, what are the things you're doing today?
So for Security Snares, I stepped into the CEO role. So dealing with existing investors, fundraising, believe it or not, product management. I'm not a technical person, but specifically within Windows drivers and endpoint security, I know extremely well.
Yeah, you get it. Yeah,
I get it. Go to market strategy, messaging. Those are the big things that I'm really focused on today, and continuing to bring what I believe is the right partner to the table. And what I mean by that is, I'm not looking for your large traditional reseller, right? The Optos, the GuidePoints, great companies, right? But they're focused on really selling and presenting to the customer what they've asked for, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I want to put Fortinet in. I want to put Checkpoint in. I want to put CrowdStrike in, or I want to put SentinelOne in, right? We look for partners that are more strategic from a consulting standpoint. Either they're already acting as an MDR provider, so they're already managing that customer, and they know what those limitations are. Those are the big ones. Or they've run across one of their customers that says, hey, they have this specific problem, and I think it's a good fit for Security Snares, and then we'll engage with them. But that is the growth component is without a doubt the most difficult thing. I can't stress that enough. Right? You could have magic dust. Yeah. You still got to get in front of the right people. You got to convince them everybody's skeptical. So how do you get that mind share?
Yeah.
And again, we found that through trusted relationships, through partners, all we need is just an opportunity to have a discussion.
Yeah. Get that snowball rolling, right? Because again, like you said, in that space, you've got tens of thousands of competitors that are saying their widget does something.
Correct.
And they're proving it out, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, awesome. Well, Robert, I think so. One thing I like to do is I do like to finish with a way to help our listeners and our viewers.
Sure.
A mistake, a failure, something in your life, whether professional or personal or whatever, that again was a significant miss for you that could be helpful for others.
So this goes back a little ways. But when I first started my first two companies, right, if you can imagine the amount of time and effort that you're putting into it, is, I always held the employee accountable for, how much time that they were investing. Okay. And I have let some good people go simply because they weren't willing to invest a certain amount of time.
Okay.
The mistake I made, and the one thing that I learned, people are different. And there are some people who can come in, they want to work from 8 to 5, and at 5:05, they're out the door. Okay. To me, back in the day, I just thought, oh, you're unmotivated, you're no good, I got to get rid of you. I made some bad decisions. And, some of these people were very good at doing their job between 8 and 5. And I had to realize not everybody is as excited or motivated as me. And that should not be held against them.
Yeah, and they could be the most productive between that time frame versus
That's
someone
correct.
who said, you know what, I'm here till 1 a.m, but they might get the same amount of work
Exactly.
done.
Exactly. So unfortunately, and I apologize to those people, I made some bad decisions, and that was something that I learned, and I would say to your listeners, your followers, don't take that for granted. Make sure understand what that person is doing, what motivates them, and at the end of the day, there's just some people who have said, my quality of life is spending time with my family and so forth, and I'm leaving every day at 5:05. God bless you, right? If you're able to do these things, and well, God bless you, right? That's not for me to say is good or bad, and that was certainly a lesson I learned early on.
Yeah, and actually, in what you just said, it's what's the output what does the company need from an output standpoint? Let's measure that.
Yeah.
And if it takes them 3 times as much, but they get it done and it's the right amount efficiency-wise for the company, awesome.
Yeah.
But what's the output you need? That's really
what it
it
comes down to.
So
yeah.
Well, awesome, Robert. Thank you. I think there's so many great nuggets in there from vast amount of experience that you have. How do people help you get your security snares out to the world? How can they get in touch with you or your company to?
Oh yeah, so websites www.securitysnares.com. Robert@securitysnares.com is the email. Love to talk to any of you, share what we're doing, and it is definitely a game changer and in something that the market hasn't seen before, and that's hence part of my excitement. I actually have something that will just flat out stop it from working, regardless of whether it's new or old or modified, and that's honestly what enterprise organizations need.
Absolutely. We got to help you get it out there because I wanted to.
Awesome.
Again, my company's been on the wrong end of that too, so please.
Yeah, it's
make
no
it work.
fun. It's no fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Robert.
Great.
Everyone, that's a wrap.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for tuning in to The Roll Call with John Glahn. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe for more insightful conversations. Remember, discovering your true role in life is a journey worth exploring each and every day. Until next time, keep defining your path and living your authentic self. This is John Glahn signing off.